Seems like you haven't heard from me for quite some time, and yes, it's been nearly 2 whole months since I did an entire episode. Of course, I don't mean to make excuses for myself, but for work, we were scrambling to put together a virtual event with the aim of bringing together more than 20 speakers into this single virtual summit event with the target of more than 1,000 attendees. I've also been trying to write up a script to sell the place we are currently staying at, and I'm not a realtor, so you can tell that I've been having a tough time doing that as well. Right now, I'm also volunteering for a political party, and you can add designing a website to my task list as well. I've also been getting some long scripts on Fiverr for voiceovers, so if you happen to hear my voice, please tell me, yeah? And one more thing. Okay, so first flex of 2021 is that I have been accepted into the NAS Academy X Grab for Good a scholarship program where I would be spending the next 6 months in a mentorship program to do content for Grab. And I'm really excited to start as well because this is going to propel me on this content creation journey. Right, so the reason I'm saying all this is because it seems I have a little too much on my plate. And it's true, some days issues will manifest physically on my body as I get home and I can't do anything. I can only lie on the sofa to play some games and I can't sleep. And of course, this would lead into more fatigue in the morning. And we're just so far away from the audience count target. So thoughts like, what if we don't manage to get enough people? What if the event bombs? What if we fail? Well, in the end, hi everyone, welcome to the Better Podcast, where I aim to help people not be good or great, but become better. I'm your host, Melvin Cito, and this podcast is one about making yourself better, especially in the realm of emotional and mental management. And of course, some episodes do touch on self-improvement, relationship, communications, and a little on general life skills just like this episode. And if you're new here, consider subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're not new here, it means you enjoy this content, so share this with someone who enjoyed this as much as you do. Be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, follow the socials in the show notes. Anyway, the event we didn't do too badly. Sure, we had some bad moments like a computer looking to update itself right before our stream was supposed to start. We had some speaker technical issues, and there was even a power outage right in the middle of one of the sessions. Still, we went through all that. We got through everything. We held an event that generated plenty of buzz within our community. Our sales were good, and everyone got plenty of value. You could say we didn't fail. But thoughts like, what if we did? What if I did? What if you did? Well, in this episode, I'll be talking about failure. This is an episode in which, during my research, I've been getting plenty of value as well. Because not everything has been smooth sailing in my life. I've stared and I have been staring in the face of failure. I have failed plenty of times, and I don't expect to never ever fail again. Honestly, to not fail means you don't have a track record of trying. There are cliched stories of Thomas Edison when, during his quest to invent a light bulb, he dropped a quote-worthy, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Also, we could find even more of these quotes to fill an entire BuzzFeed article, but we don't need that because I've narrowed it down to 4 articles that I'll be going through later on in this episode. Now, the first example of failure is right in front of me. There is this screen, which is a feature of Facebook, and it says waiting for others to join, because my initial intention for opening this room is to invite people into a common place where we can have a sort of like a focus group to have a chat. As you can see right now, I scheduled this to start at 10 p.m. This is on a Sunday, and it's 10:34, and until now, I've had only one person join the room and left. In fact, he joined this room only because he was curious to see what is this room all about. So, well, this is already a failure by itself. Will I be taking this failure personally? I guess not. It's clearly spoken about in this article. This first article by Sondra Davis, who is the founder and CEO for Greenhouse Eco Cleaning. The first thing she mentions is one of her favorite quotes, which comes from the Oprah Winfrey. She says, "Think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failing is another stepping stone to greatness." Of course, my advice to anyone who is considering doing something is that don't let your failures be a stumbling block, but instead make it a stepping stone. As cliched as that previous quote by Thomas Edison is, it's true, right? You either win or you learn from failure. If you take every single failure as a disappointment or crack in your armor, you're missing out on an opportunity to grow and learn. If you start embracing the idea that failing is inevitable, I assure you, I'm not a successful entrepreneur by any means, but I'm very sure that everyone fails at any one point in time. And like what I said earlier, failure, the lack of failures, just means you didn't try anything. But what's the difference that separates failing in a task and identifying yourself as a failure? The first thing to note is never to take it personally. She writes in her article, as entrepreneurs, we have put our heart and soul into building our business, which can make it difficult for us to separate our professional brand from our personal identity. When you draw a line between the two, just because your idea failed, just because your execution failed, it hasn't made you a failure. It's harder to bounce back when you take failure to heart and make it about your value as a person. Failure doesn't change who you are as a person or your overall worth to your company and community. It is simply a tool for showing you what does and what doesn't work. Of course, when you fail, the first thing to really take note of is take a deep breath. Understand why you failed. In fact, we will definitely feel frustrated at failing. And this article, the second article that I have in this repertoire, is a guide to failure, to recovering from a fail. It says here, first of all, take a deep breath. You're probably going to panic. And when you panic, something bad happens, which often leads to a poorly thought out reaction. That might lead you to do something that makes it harder to recover from your mistake. It might lead you to beating yourself up. All you need to do is curse a bit, get it out, make it quick, then go into recovery mode. Now you're in recovery mode. The first thing to do is to identify the problem, to figure out a solution. Sometimes people will come to you and say that, hey, this thing is on fire, it's a catastrophe, when no mistake has been done by you. So don't take that failure upon yourself. Sometimes everything is fine, not just from your viewpoint. Maybe this client or maybe this other stakeholder is just overreacting. But other times there might be a real problem. So find out exactly what is the mistake and identify what is wrong. Of course, at other times, everything might be wrong. There is a top category, a top tier kind of mistake, and every single thing is on fire. But there definitely would be a solution, or rather, there is likely going to be a solution. It might require other people's help, it might not. There might be more than one solution. In fact, more often than not, there is. You just need to identify the most efficient disruption minimizing solution and the best long-term solution. Sometimes you need to patch a hole, you need to put a band-aid on it, but The most important thing is to stop any more damage being done or disruption from happening if you can. This episode is not going to be a very long one, but I'll cover the rest of the points after the break. Right, welcome back to the Better Podcast, and in case you just joined us, this episode is about failure, and I am just in the middle of a post-mortem on what to do after a task gone wrong. If you haven't listened to the first half, make sure you rewind back to the start. So let's carry on. Now, this is going to be an insight for some people who are listening. The next step is to put a time limit on your first move. Because if you made a mistake that could impact others, you need to implement a solution that will stop the problem within 5 to 10 minutes. Often, when the problem is technical, you want to find the most robust long-term fix, one that repairs at the source. But any delay is going to affect others too, so you must implement an immediate solution. Once the dust has settled, go back and make more permanent repairs. Now, the next step is really important, especially when you work in a team. You need to be able to communicate what has gone wrong. But how do we do that? You have to communicate strategically and wisely, but make sure you communicate. To those who might be delayed or affected, you need to let those people know that there is a disruption, that it will delay or affect them for a specific amount of time. You don't need to elaborate. The most important thing is that you can minimize the negative impact of any problem by allowing those affected to plan accordingly for the disruption. This can lessen any snowball effect on your colleagues and can manage other people's expectations, taking some of the pressure off you. All you need to do is state, as a matter of fact, there has been a disruption which has been solved but caused a delay of 30 minutes or so. On the point of communication, the second piece of communication you must make is to your superior or supervisor. All you need to do is to tell them what happened, what have you done to solve the problem, and what would you put in place to ensure it wouldn't happen again. As long as you do this can make you look good. Because even though you have made a mistake, it is going to be empowering, it's going to be positive, and it's going to be impressive. People get mad about people messing up only because it means more often than not, they have to deal with it. But if you present them with information and not a problem, there's nothing for any reasonable person to get mad about. So in this article also, this writer, Katie Hinson, also includes a post-mortem on being able to do a post-failure kind of reflection, which I think is super important for anyone to be able to do, especially when there are any hiccups in their plans. Now, just talk about the most important steps in this post-mortem. You have to ask yourself 6 W's. What went well? And I don't like this what went badly because I usually say what went wrong. So all you need to do is to be able to ask yourself what went well. Now, one of the things that I really don't like about Asian culture is that we place a bit too much emphasis on humility, and we miss out on great opportunities to pat ourselves on the back and to give ourselves credit for things that we have done well. Take some time after every task. Think about what you did well. You are in a position to conceptualize something to be able to tell your superiors, to be able to tell people around you, maybe a future interviewer, about what you have done better than the average person. Right? Of course, we don't have to stop right there. We have to ask ourselves what went wrong. With this list, you are going to have more wrongs, especially after a failure, you're going to have more wrongs than wells. But the next step is so important in following up with what went wrong. You have to ask yourself what are some of the factors that helped, or more importantly, hurt your performance. The next question to ask yourself is, what did you learn? Because each time you do something, you definitely would have to learn something. If not, you're just going through the motions, you're not doing a job at all, you're not completing a task. So not just what did you learn, but if you could start again tomorrow, what would you do differently? The next thing you need to do during this post-mortem is to ask yourself, what did you learn? Because each time you do a job, you learn something. Even if you didn't fail, you learned something. If you haven't learned anything out of doing a single task, an event, a campaign, or whatever long form kind of project, that means you're just going through the motion. If you're not internalizing everything that you have done well or done wrong, then you're not learning anything, and you're likely going to be making the same mistakes as your previous failure. So not only ask yourself what did you learn, but ask yourself, if you could start again tomorrow, what would you do differently? So this gives you some sort of introspection where you can make full use of hindsight. Hindsight, as we all know, is 20/20, but I guarantee you, every time you do a task, you're going to be able to apply whatever you have learned into a future task as well, especially if you're doing it for work. So the whole idea of doing this post-mortem is to be able to avoid repeating mistakes and use every single aspect of your prior experience, your successes, your failures to dramatically improve your professional performance. And that, my friend, is the beauty of this quote over here, which is from the same article: fail early, fail often, but always fail forward. More important than learning what to do when you fail is to understand the mentality behind failure itself. When I say mentality, it might seem a bit abstract, but because a lot of people will write articles, and you will see plenty of them, I guarantee it, like this. In this article written by Michael on medium.com, if you are truly passionate about your craft and want to be successful, you have to pursue it with a level of grit and consistency that doesn't always come naturally. Well, of course, you have to persevere throughout in life, and people can tell you to persevere, to push through, you need to have grit, you need to have determination, and so on and so forth. But I think all that is useless if you are not driving this with passion, but rather just obligation. Do you know why I've been doing this podcast, even though I know I don't get many followers? Because I'll be vulnerable and start sharing this with you today, but my dream is to be able to do content for the rest of my life, be it in a podcast format, be it in video format, any format. I just want to be able to impact more than just one person in my life. So that passion really drives me, and at the end of the day, I know that content creation is not just about churning stuff out and praying for people to visit, to view, to consume this content, but more importantly is, as long as you do it, people will do just that. And the last article that I want to be speaking about today is this article written by Arti Agarwal. In this article titled "Why We Need to Talk About Failure," he starts this article with this sentence: "Failure sucks, success is glamorous, therein lies the problem." See, in social media, in public talks, in events, even probably in many webinars that you have been popping up on your Facebook feed in recent times, you would see people bragging about themselves. You will see people only showing their successes. But what most of them don't show you is the countless failures that they have gone through before getting to that stage. So a lot of times we internalize in ourselves that success is beautiful, failure is ugly. We love success and we admire successful people because they are successful. Or on the flip side of it, we think that failure is ugly, is pathetic, it affects your own identity and you call yourself a loser. And unfortunately, it is a far, far bigger reality of life than success is or ever can be. But isn't that the beauty of it all? Isn't that the beauty of life? Now, every single day, we face failure as well as successes as well. The fact that you are listening to this podcast, it means that you succeeded at waking up from your bed this morning. But the fact that you're listening to this podcast means you failed to be doing something even more productive unless you planned to listen to this episode of the Better Podcast, which means you have succeeded. Failure is not all beautiful, but it is something so necessary to make you see reality that sometimes you keep missing. Maybe today you're going to be insensitive to someone else's feelings. Maybe you're not going to be giving time to your health. Maybe you're not making a commitment that your wife expects you to do. But at the end of the day, you are being forced to rethink, re-strategize, reevaluate something in your life. And that, I feel, is the beauty of failure. In fact, in this article, he quotes, "Failure brings far more depth to us than success ever can. Failure is a launchpad for the next level of success and fulfillment if used to discover your own blind spots, flaws in your value system, flaws in your methods of working, or flaws in anything else that's holding you back from experiencing life at its best." So, I've used the word fail so many times in this episode that some of you might be triggered by now. But I want to encourage you with this. Once again, I have to repeat this over and over again. Even if you fail, you have only failed at a task, you have only failed at a relationship, you are not a failure. So that's all the time I have for this episode. Once again, this is a Better Podcast. Once again, I'm Melvin. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you do all the things you need to do on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, do all the things you need to do on YouTube, and be sure to drop me a review, drop me a PM if you have any questions, comments, or even feedback. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.